What's up? It's your boy Cam Meekins. It's the Cam Meekins Show, episode number 23. In the building with my guy Lil Rich, virtually in the building. What's going on, dude?
What's good, Brody? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm just jealous of your setup, dude. I'm loving the background of the setup, man. This shit's fucking dope.
Thank you, bro. It just happened to be this way, like you said. Like we were talking about. You said everybody had to step up their interior design.
Yeah, well, that's my theory, man. Like everyone had to kind of step their interior design game up with this digital meeting shit during COVID. And I feel like those are people who did do that. You're like, okay, those are like attention to detail people. Mm-hmm. You know, like I fuck with that. And then the people who are like on their fucking random ass background, or they're using the background pictures. And no hate to anyone who's doing that. I've had a couple guests who've had the background pictures, and that's kind of like the rare factor. Like McConan did that shit. He was like in space while I was talking to him the whole time.
That's like, I feel like that's so on brand for him.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense. I get that. But,
sure.
You know, there's some dope shit you can do with, you know, a little 16:9 square in terms of framing yourself. So we've all had a lot of fun with that.
I feel it's bad. Like one time I did made an appearance for one of my good friends' podcast for back home, and I was like super like unprepared, and I apologize for, but I literally like did the call in the car, and I'm like driving. I feel like I've seen that a lot though. Like I've watched different podcasts and people just do it driving, but me personally, being an audio guy, I felt like crazy because you know you hear all the outside stuff, the car running, so that made me feel bad. But like, I knew with this one, I had enough like time knowing up ahead, so I could get in the living room and really have the nice setup.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I noticed when I started doing these more is that working with different guests and things like that, like you got to just try and give them as much information as you can. Like that email, like, you know, I send out an email with all the info, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like a copy and paste to every single person. And it's just so helpful. It's like, here's the info, here's what time it is. You know, day before, hey, just check it in, make sure we're good tomorrow. If you got to change, no worries. Hour before, you kind of have to get that shit down to a science. Otherwise, it's tough, man, because it's a lot to ask people to come on a podcast, and everybody's got a fucking podcast now. You know, like it's definitely not an easy thing. But that's also why I was so stoked to start to do this, because I feel like, when was the last time you and I got to actually sit down for an hour and really just chop it up, you know? And it's dope to be able to put that out in public, but it's even just dope for me and you to be able to talk.
Right. No, and that's the first, when you asked me, like that was the first thing I thought of, because I know we spoke here and there about getting up. It just never really happened. But the minute you mentioned the podcast, now I'm like, okay, this is fire. It's because, one, we're super cool, so we can have like an honest, like comfortable, genuine conversation, but just for the viewers to actually tune into it. So I think it works out dope. Honestly.
No, 100%. Yeah, it's funny, man. Like I was so tucked off for this whole year of the pandemic thing, and now I'm on the other side of it, and I feel like I've been vaccinated. I'm starting to introduce more shit into my life. But the podcast has allowed me to kind of re-engage with a ton of different people, and a lot of times after I'll do one of these episodes, I'll end up way more connected with that person. If it's like a homie or someone that I knew or someone that I barely even knew or whatever, building a new friendship with someone who comes on as a guest or whatever. So this is a really cool thing, man. And I'm stoked to start to have the in-person dynamic of that too, because then that brings in a whole nother level of like, you're in person, hanging out, we're drinking some whiskey, talking shit. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like the combos are going to get even better. So if you're listening, tune in. That's just coming soon. But man, what's been going on, dude? I know you got solo shit going on. I know you just produced the song of the summer for Chet Hanks. So you know, so I definitely want to ask you about that. But what's been going on, man?
Man, everything is amazing, man. It's all glory to God. It's such a blessing to be here, because I feel like, me personally, and like the people around me can attest to it, like it's been a long time coming, you know. Just from like super humble beginnings, coming from, you know, back home where we're from. It's just putting it all in perspective, being here now, you know, coming up, it was just so, it was difficult I think for a lot of different reasons, because, you know, everybody's come up when they get to like a point where like maybe not where they feel like they've reached like the top of their success, but like really got the ball rolling, they look back and be like, you know, I came from something like where there's the struggle, but being from up north where there wasn't really a blueprint for me per se to make it happen in the industry that I'm in, being here now is just so like the gratitude, I guess, is just so uncanny. You know what I mean? If I can like elaborate what I've been doing personally, like you said, my solo stuff, like it took a while to get to that point, you know, because I was in a group with my cousin for a while. And then when I came to LA, I put the artist stuff down to really just focus on producing for other people and being like to the hip with them and execing my friends, you know what I mean? Like really helping them push their careers forward. And then being now top of the year where I have a chance to just, you know, go solo and really like, you know, take what I've learned from being in the producer engineer chair for a lot of my friends, from independent to major label. I've gotten to really like study, learn tricks of the trade, trial and error to just add it and use it to my advantage for my own stuff. So, I mean, the dynamic of it all is really dope, you know?
100%, man. Yeah. Well, you know, it's always nice to have all these different moving pieces, but then get to a point where you're really focusing on that thing that kind of got you there too. You know what I'm saying? Like if you started out as a solo artist and were really on that path and then took a second, you were producing for some of the biggest artists in the game, and now to come back and do the solo shit again, that's got to be a pretty good feeling, I imagine.
Yeah, it's huge, man. It's crazy because I don't think I've thought of it to myself, talked to my friends about it, but I don't know if I ever said it like in this type of setting. But like a lot of people that I've worked with, like you mentioned, like some like the biggest artists in the industry, I got in with them very early per se, and this is like an ongoing theme, right? Mm. Everyone who I've worked with, like even with us, but just like my whole catalog, I have personal relationships with, you know, like, you know, more power to like the producers that, you know, really work more on the digital side as far as like email and virtually. It's really dope for them. But for me, that's never been a case. And it just is what it is. Like, so it's a blessing though, because I feel like all the people I've gotten to work with from, you know, when they just started bubbling to now, like superstardom for them, we've gotten to make music on a deeper level because I've been able to connect with them personally, be in the room, hold relationships with them. Like we, like, you know, like between like me and you, like we talk outside of working creatively and we have this relationship creatively.
Right.
So I think that adds a ton to, you know, the work process and stuff like that.
No, that's really interesting. I totally get that because you're right. To be a producer in this day and age is not one particular thing. There's a lot of different ways to kind of do that. There's stuff going on the internet, you know, the digital side, being a really good marketer, being, you know, on the YouTube side, doing all this shit. And some of those dudes, you know, end up getting #1 records and you know, crazy shit. And I think it all comes down to kind of what you value in terms of what you're doing and your business and your art and your creative and everything. And when you're like, I feel like you seem to really value that in studio time with people actually genuinely connecting, which is so dope, you know, and it reflects in the type of music that gets made in that type of environment. When you're actually connected with another artist, you know, or you're doing your solo shit with other people or whatever it might be, when you're together being friends, having drinks in the studio, like when I come to your studio, it's an environment, you know, it's a creative environment that makes you want to create and feel like you're having fun. And then the music reflects that because that environment puts you in that headspace. And that is a super important part of the production of the music too. You're producing a vibe when you curate that kind of environment, you know?
Yeah, we're just virtually making, not virtually, bad use of word. I think I just like that word a lot.
Yeah,
now.
right.
But we're just we're I guess what you could say is like we're creating moments, right?
Right.
And that's what I feel like I fell in love with. How I fell in love with a lot of like my favorite artists coming up was I always would hear the music and they would almost like bring you into like the world of, it almost puts you in exactly the room of or the environment of where they were, like just like creating special moments and memories in the songs. Like it reflects from like the audio to the actual feeling. So for me, like, you know, for everybody, I think we attach music to our memories and just to where we was at the time we heard it and just like the feeling it gave us. So I think looking back on like all the records I've done with people I work with, they just really give me feelings and give me nostalgia and that's like that's a big driving point to the stuff I do when it comes to creating music,
Right.
which I necessarily don't get when I send stuff through email. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, like with different people, like say like a Stiz, like I've given him beats through email, and he's cut to them, and it goes like that. But more than half the time, we're in the room creating these moments and creating music. And like you said, the environment is going to drive the songs. You know what I mean? So I think it's a really cool dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you know, it's there's so many different ways that you can do it. But I think that particular way that you've clearly had a lot of success with in your career is very cool from an artistic standpoint because it's just very genuine and authentic. You're able to have these real life connections where it's like, you know, you end up like you and I, you know, we did big joints together, but 90% of our time is having genuine connections. And then the 10% is the work or, you know, whatever it might be. And that's, you know, that's fucking dope. Especially if you can make a career out of that and still have all these experiences and shit like that. So I wanted to go back, you know, because you said something interesting. So coming from the Boston area and now, you know, being out here in LA and having produced with some of the biggest dudes in the game, YG, Stiz, Bia, you know, all this dope shit that you've been involved with. Now you're doing your solo shit and, you know, haven't had the success that you've had in the last couple years, but coming from Boston where there isn't that blueprint, you know, and then your particular area, Boston too, in that, you know, how were you able to cut through and actually get that chance to make this happen? You know?
Mm-hmm. I would say it was a blessing coming from where I came from because I think the authenticity and the originality separates me just because of where I'm from. Nobody came from where I'm from, so and we kind of have our own culture where we're from as well. So I think that played a big role as well as like, you know, trial and error coming up, not really knowing how to like get leeway on the business side. But I guess like all those years really helped me hone my skills till I got to the point where I could, you know, really be confident in the beats I was making and the music that I was making to where, you know, like me and Stiz link in the city and he starts to really go crazy, which early on that gave me some producer success to the point where I developed more confidence and able to go to Los Angeles where it's, you know, still to me like the number one music entertainment hub in the country, maybe if not the world. So like once I got to the point where I was ready to, you know, start traveling outside of the city and really just getting my feet wet in the West Coast, which is like the opposite of where we're from, you know what I'm saying? Like essentially.
Yeah.
Really when I got to Los Angeles was when things started to pick up for me in my career. And I think it just happened super naturally, man. I didn't even know what I was really doing when I started coming here. I think when I first came here, me and my cousin were shooting a music video, and during like the process of us being here, we started running into people and started building a little network. So as time went on, I started coming to Los Angeles for a weekend, then a week, then 2 weeks, then I do month trips, and then it became a point where I just was doing so much good that I was like, yo, I can't go back. Like I was taking steps back if I went home. So it gradually happened naturally. And then being here taught me a lot about the industry and just things that, like, you know, like a lot of people coming up don't really know. Like there's so many little intricacies in being in this industry that can, if you know it, it can help you really excel, that you would never realize being from a place where opportunity is thin, you know? So I guess I could just say it happened very naturally.
Yeah. Was that a
Long
crazy experience to start to actually peel back the layers once you got out here and saw how the industry actually worked versus what you thought it might have been like? Or, you know, did you just kind of fall into place and you felt like, okay, cool, I'm starting to kind of understand how this works? Or was it a little bit of like a shock to you in terms of kind of how the industry works?
It wasn't really a shock to me because I think well, let me not say that. There's been times where I've been very surprised in like just seeing, you know, like, oh, okay, so this is what's going on and this is what I could do to my advantage. Because I guess like when you pull back the curtain on anything that seems to be, you know, like this big glowing light of what, you know, whether it's sports, whether it's just entertainment in general, I think you just off natural reaction, you become super shocked. But I guess what I would say is for me, um, one big thing I learned when I got out here that I could use to my advantage was being an engineer.
Mm.
Which when I was back home, like I went to engineering school for a couple of years, and I didn't realize how big it was going to be, how important it was going to be for me and my success. But coming out here, being an engineer allowed me to be in the room at any time because I'm the utility guy. So, and I, you know, you're in control. I think I heard this interview and 40 was talking, I think it was 40 Kevin Durant. And I completely, like, that whole thing resonated with me because I felt exactly the same when he was like, you're in the driver's seat as an engineer, you know, whether you're an artist, producer, as well on the side. If you're the engineer and you control the session, you can invite all these other things to the table. So once I got to LA and really utilized my engineering skills, I got to introduce the production. And then once I got to introduce the production, I got to introduce my artistry. And then like a lot of my peers started to have like this revered like confidence for me just because they were already cool with me as engineer, producer, Rich, and then artist now. So it invited so many things in for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting, man, because there's so much trust there between the engineer and any artist, you know, and I feel like people, you know, there's just a lot of trust there, and you know, you build a very deep creative relationship when you have an engineer artist dynamic going on. So that's interesting that you were able to use that to introduce more layers into, you know, these different creative environments that you were in. That's super cool. What was it like being at engineering school? Did you feel like that was something that was beneficial, or, you know, because I've got this this theory about like different schools that do these skill-based things, to particularly in the music or creative or like film world. It's like, you know, I just kind of feel like these things are a little bit of a racket. Like they charge you this money and, you know, you're doing these classes, but what are you able to get out of it? But I don't have any personal experience with it. So I'm kind of curious to hear your experience there and your thoughts on that world.
Yeah. So it changed my life, man.
Really?
Honestly. Yeah, it was definitely life changing. It made me listen to music, even like in working on music and just looking at music a completely different way. I mean, when I went to school, when I started going, I already had like, you know, like kind of an idea of how to engineer. I knew how to track, but I didn't know the mixing elements. I didn't know, you know, signal flow, which is like knowing how everything is, how all the channels are in and how everything works in the studio, you know, like even from just things that like I probably use not even thinking about it, but that I've learned from school, just like acoustics in general, like the room, like what sounds reflect off what sounds, and like just so many things that really like it gave me validation of me. Okay, like now I know what I'm doing and nobody can tell me otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, I guess coming up, um, even now, like now that I've been an engineer for like the past, 9 years or so, like I get, questions from artists, and then some people are like trying to like critique something or think they know the answer to things. And like me just having the knowledge, I could tell them like, no, this is what that is. And this is why this is happening. And even just hearing other people's mixes and music period, it's like when you have that hat on, it's like if you're in the film business and you watch movies, you know how the movie's made, you watch it in a different way. Me as an engineer, I hear music in a different way. Sometimes it's annoying because I want to just go back to being a listener again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now that I'm an engineer, I hear everything, like not even trying to hear it.
You're hearing everything one by one too. You're hearing it tracked out in your mind.
Everything one by one, from snare to hi-hat to the melody to vocal. Like I hear everything. Like I can almost like picture exactly how it was mixed, like every song I listen to. So it's cool, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what school did for me,
Yeah.
But I could say school is, for me, I don't know if I could speak for everybody, but school is huge for me, huge.
Well, that's really interesting to hear because I definitely get that, and that's a good perspective. And your situation and experience with it seems like it was life changing in a lot of ways. So you feel like you got the value that you were going there to get out of it.
Yeah,
and more so maybe. Yeah, that's dope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I was having that conversation like not even 2 hours ago about how when you're an artist or you're an engineer, and I get particularly when you're an engineer more so than even being an artist, but no matter what you do, if you do like music, when you're hearing music in different public settings, you're not interacting with music the same way that like the average listener is interacting with music. Like anytime I hear music in the car, if I'm with like two people and there's music playing, I can't keep track of the conversation going on over here and the music playing on the radio. And so I'm always turning the music down if people are trying to talk, because I can't listen to music passively. Right. It's just not possible for me to do that. I'm hearing everything one by one, like you said. And, it's almost like, when I'm doing music all day in the studio, I almost don't even go and listen to music after the fact in my normal like social environment, because it gets me in a whole like work headspace,
Yep.
So I totally feel you on that, man. I definitely hear you. So what's the process? Has the process changed for you in the last year, like dealing with the COVID shit, in terms of, getting in the studio with different people? Have you had to adapt in terms of emailing more and doing shit like that, or you just have kept the circle close and just, you're still rocking and doing everything, like that? Or have you had to make an adjustment there?
With some people, but
Yeah.
a lot of the people like close core that I work with, we've still been able to like, get in together like in person and really go to the studio. So that's been a blessing, honestly, because I mean, I hear stories and I just like, I know how tough it is,
Yeah.
Especially someone that works how I work, like usually in person with people. So it's really like hindered some work relationships, but for the most part, I've been getting in the studio in the room with people. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's dope, man. So when you came out here and you started to kind of have more success with everything that you were doing, I'm curious, mentally, how did you start to interact with that success? Like did you start to feel really good where you were at? And I'm thinking about this because I'm looking at the happiness and success signs behind your head, and it's just got me thinking about the correlation between the two of those things. And I'm wondering what that is for you, because I had a really good conversation the other day with my homie on the podcast, and we were talking about kind of fulfillment and success and what drives it, and is it the next big thing, is it the next big song, having a number one that you're on, or like the biggest song on TikTok right now is your shit, or like whatever it might be. Does that genuinely make you feel happier that night when you go home, or is it some other shit? And just kind of curious your perspective, because I feel like you've been taking a lot of wins, which is fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, like, does it always feel as good each win that you get, or is the first one feeling good and then it's less each time? Like, how do you balance all that shit?
So I would say I personally never get too high or too low. And I think that's what like allows me to stay uncompromised and keep working through. So the wins, like, don't get me wrong, like I celebrate every win appropriately because I know where we came from,
Yeah.
But I think what drives me is I always knew, and I still feel like I'm gonna be one of the biggest in the game, and that's just me speaking confidently. But one thing I really knew it was gonna be more so of like no shortcuts, no elevators, just really steps. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's helped keep me grounded and motivated, is that these wins, they don't come in like these big margins. They're like really close together, and they just lead up and get better and better, like in their own regards. So I think it's really that all of that is really just helped me like keep pushing forward and just continue to like push the envelope musically. I'm trying to figure out how I could put it into words, but basically, yeah, man, it's just been really, really cool to just grind it out. That's like my whole summary for it. It's been grinding it out, and I don't know if I chase number ones and chase big accolades in the music I make. I just feel like it's gonna happen that way because the people I work with and like what drives my musicality is like kind of like originality. What's kind of like annoyed me in the space that I'm in. There's a lot of like pros and cons and to the space that I'm in. But I would say like it's a lot of redundancy, which is like, don't get me wrong, like hip hop is probably as successful as it's ever been, which I think is very, which is so super dope about it. But for me, I think what drives me musically is like chasing originality in such a oversaturated space. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
How can we stand out creating this music thing? Like still remain very natural and do what feels right. But I think what's driven the music and the work ethic is just really trying to create, I guess, feeling from some of my favorite eras and just like some of my most favorite times when I've heard music. Like, so I think that's the feeling I've been like searching for me personally in my solo music and for people I produce for. And that's what really drives it all.
Yeah. And kind of trying to put your own updated spin on that in a sense. Exactly. Yeah, I hear you on that. Where do you think that level-headedness, the way that you're able to kind of view the game in this sense and your business and everything, that level-headedness that you're talking from, where do you think that comes from? Is that, are you a faith-based person? Is it, you feel like that's your upbringing, just kind of your environment, or do you think that it's a product of the fact that you've been grinding it out step by step like that, so you're not unaware to just the position that you're in and just looking at it as a professional. You know, I feel like sometimes when people get success super quickly, you know, they don't know how to manage it necessarily. But when you've worked really hard over years and years, and you really had to grind it out, and then things do start to go right for you, you're thankful for that, but you're not acting out of pocket with it, you know? And so where do you think that's coming from for you?
I mean, I think you honestly said it all. Like everything of that contributes to like my process, because for one, it was definitely upbringing. Like my father, like he literally like raised me with music. So like from as a child, he used to play music around me all the time. Specifically like, you know, a lot of like hip hop, R&B, even like old funk stuff, like everything like under the sun. And the upbringing really helped like drive my inspiration and creativity and the stuff I'm doing. And I to answer another part of that, I think I'm blessed. I am very, very spiritual, and I think I'm blessed with like the skill of awareness, and just as far as like how the whole landscape looks in music and where I sit in it, you know what I mean? With that awareness really helps me like analyze like everything that's going on musically, like just the way things sound, like how trends are going. And I really apply that to what we're doing, because right now more than ever, I feel like there's spaces missing in music, like the musicality of things, where I'm like, you know what, like there's this void in music. Like if we fill this void that's missing in the music, we'll be able to stand out and we could change the landscape of it all. You know what I mean? Because everything comes around, like history repeats itself. And also, I just feel like right now we're in the, like, I'd say we're in the TikTok era, right? And the last time I felt there was an era like this was the ringtone era, like when Soulja Boy. And that's how I know history repeats itself, and this is really where we are again. Like dances, singles, like,
dude, that's so true. Like, wow, yeah.
Like we've seen this era before, but it's just different. You know what I mean? And I start to think about the last 20 years, and I'm like thinking like what worked. You know what I mean? Like what was like the top of like the golden standard of like music, like as far as like, you know, what was like top 10 on Billboard even like 20 years ago. And that's for me, like what a lot of like the up-tempo R&B stuff I do, for me personally, that I have coming to bring to the table. I think that space in particular is missing a lot. We have a lot of like, you know, a lot of hard street stuff. We got like women are going crazy, you know what I mean? That's new, but like I've seen like familiarity in that. And even like some of like the, you know, mid-tempo, lo-fi R&B, super dope. But I'm like, yo, there's a space missing for up-tempo R&B, which was very prevalent 20 years ago, that really just destroyed Billboard and destroyed like mainstream music. So like, I'm just being very specific here, but that's just a point to like my awareness, I would say. And I'm not saying this to act like, yo, I know it all, because I don't, you know what I mean? But I just think music is going to shift again. We're really in what was the ringtone era now. And if you remember back then, it changed into something else. And knowing that history repeats itself, I know it's going to change again. So basically all the things you said, upbringing, my faith, and just experiences helped me, you know, really navigate.
Yeah, you would think that the more up-tempo R&B shit, you're right, it's such a void, and we're so dance-based right now because of TikTok that those things seem to correlate. You know what I'm saying? Like up-tempo, that kind of vibe correlates to everything that's happening with kids doing these dances and shit like that too. So yeah, that's really interesting. The ringtone era comparison is so spot on. I feel like these waves that you're talking about, these, you know, cycles of creativity that happen, they don't just happen in music, they happen in all of the arts and in life too. And I feel like what it is like a new platform comes out, like the ability to have a ringtone, you know what I'm saying, or TikTok. And what happens is the first stuff to cut through on that platform is like the most basic version of something, because it's you know, the path of least resistance to cut through on that platform. So the shit that's popping off on TikTok right now is like up in your face, quick, and it's the same as Spotify too, because Spotify is algorithm based as well. And so the stuff that does well on Spotify is right away getting into the hook, you know, super quick songs, you know, the amount of time that a song has gone down. All this different stuff is happening because this is like the first iteration of all of this stuff with these new platforms of TikTok and Spotify and the new way that we're consuming music. And it's all great music. There's a lot of great music being made, but it's simple music. And like the ringtone stuff was like simple as well, you know, like all the Soulja Boy stuff was really like simple, catchy hooks that correlated perfectly to a ringtone. And now it's simple, catchy hooks that correlate perfectly to a TikTok. Yep. And you just need that little soundbite, and that's all you're searching for. It's just that little soundbite. And the cycle component is, what happens is the first version of all that stuff is all like that, but then somebody comes along and either drops some like incredible complex project that like you have to get deep into to really understand, like, you know, Good Kid, Mad City, or like some shit like that, you know, like just an epic project that's like really well done. And I'm just talking in music specifically, but I feel like this example works for anything when things go in these cycles where stuff is really kind of cookie cutter simple, and then it gets flipped on its head when something great comes out. Because I really truly believe that while all of us are consuming all these little quick bites of TikTok, you know, content and everything like that, we're really, really yearning for something deeper, you know? Like all this music is great, and I love listening to a lot of this stuff, and it's so fun to like throw it on in your car when you're going out to go like have a party or do whatever you're doing. It's great, amazing music. But I think we need more substance too, because we've been like so, you know, just kind of hit over the head with this type of thing that's going on. And somebody somewhere will come out with some shit that does that, you know, and then we go into the next phase and everyone's trying to be on their more, you know, in-depth shit, you know, and it's just so funny, man. It just repeats itself over and over and over again. And it's cool that you're able to have that view of it, you know, and use that in your own career too.
No, yeah, thank you, bro. It's just once I came to that realization, I'm like, okay, like I know we could really make some things happen, because right after that era per se, where it was ringtones and singles and dances and stuff like that, came one of my favorite eras, which was the whole mixtape era. You know what I mean? Which birthed a lot of amazing projects and a lot of legacy acts that from our generation. You know what I mean? Like I could go down the line from like, you know, I mean, Drake came in that era.
Drake, yeah. Wiz.
It was Wiz, Mac, you know, Big Sean.
Lil Wayne was going crazy back then.
It's Nipsey, Wale, like the list goes on of like a lot of that era. That was like really like, besides like, you know, some of like early 2000 stuff, that was like my favorite era of music. And I know it's going to come back to that in a different form. So I'm like, you know what? Like knowing that, I'm like, all right, cool. We can be ahead of the curve on a lot of this shit. You know?
Yeah.
So, and it's just like that area of just breeded such good music, man. Like just classics, like stuff we're going to be playing for the years to come. Like I truly feel like if there was a time capsule and, you know, we buried it for 100 and some years, like a lot of stuff, a lot of music that came from that era is going to be in that time capsule. Bro.
Oh, without a doubt, dude. Without a doubt. And not as much music that's happening right now, quite frankly. You know, that era had some classics, dude. I mean, I remember going to Best Buy and buying the So Far Gone mixtape CD, you know,
Right.
or downloading Cushion Orange Juice on Dat Piff the day that it came out.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it was more substance. Like those dudes brought in a new level of substance and depth to it, where you had to go into their catalog and really hear what they were saying and hear, you know, the story. I feel like Drake started to like paint this really interesting story, this narrative that like Lil Wayne came in and propped him up and like Young Money put him on, and like it was just this crazy story that he was able to use for like a few years to really just get people so excited about the music.
Yeah.
Like that 3 years of like mixtapes and Lil Wayne features and different things like prior to Drake's first album was just so much anticipation. You know what I'm saying? Because he was able to tell this narrative of this like story, which was a real story, but it was just so well done in how he kind of told it through the music.
Right.
You know?
Right. And one thing I've also noticed from that little like pocket of space musically was a lot of these big artists, like the space of like the major artists from that era, are so unique and in their original in their own regards. I think right now, and I'm not trying to not like I gotta reiterate, I'm not trying to knock this era, because I think there's a lot of good that comes from the era we're in. And sometimes I'll be like, damn, I feel like an old head, because this is something like,
Yeah, right.
you know what I mean? Like
No, of
I'm
course.
young, like I feel like an old head, but like oh, it goes back to the redundancy thing. You know what I mean? Whereas like in that era, like all of like even like the 6-7 artists I just named were all so different, bro.
Yep.
So different. But all their music was so respected and so good. You know what I mean?
100%.
And that way, I just think like that's gonna make music exciting again. And in a way, is like just more classics come from just, you know, people being original, and you fall in love with these people because they're just so themselves, you know, and they're like nothing else you've seen. So that's I just keep correlating like the past to now, and I just think really it's just gonna play itself out again the same way.
100%. And we're not even talking about a long moment in time. And we're talking about, you know, 10 years or whatever it is. And it's not knocking on what's going on now, because there's a kid out there who's feeling the way that we're talking about, you know, the shit that's coming out right now, or the shit that you're making, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever it might be. Because I feel like what we consumed when we were like 17 is what sticks with us for like our entire life.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like I'll be listening to the shit that I listened to in high school for the rest of my life, and those will be like the soundtracks of my life.
Literally.
You know, and I don't know why that is. You know, I feel like when you're at that age, you have this really deep relationship with music, and we're two musicians, so we're always going to have a deep relationship with music. But there's something different there when you're like a teenager and you're into music. You know, it just hits different, for sure.
Crazy.
Yeah. So what's your creative process like in terms of, you know, when you're working on your new shit? How do you get into that headspace? Are you just in the studio letting it, you know, go where it wants to go, or do you have like a system to it?
I think it kind of just really like piggybacking off what you just said, that like really helps me drive a lot of my solo stuff, is going back and playing a lot of that music. You know what I mean? I drive a lot of inspiration from older things. And I think it's really beneficial, because I don't want to sound like everything that's going on right now. I don't want to be too left, but I just don't want, I got to separate myself. And I tell myself that over and over. And the way I do that, like some people, like some of my friends and people that know me, like just like kind of like laugh or get annoyed, because I do play a lot of like old stuff. And it's not like super old stuff. Like you said, it's like 10, 12 years in the past. So I go back and play a lot of that stuff, and I will apply a lot of those things in the instrumentation of the solo stuff that I'm making. But I think what blends the worlds is like we're living in present time. So the stuff I'm talking about and just like even like the lingo, the words I use, cadences are very now. But I think the sound bed and the feeling feels like some of my favorite music that I felt. Like if my music does not give me that feeling, then it just I didn't do a good job. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So if I could like, and people have told me like, yeah, like you really did that. Like you really, it feels old, like something I've felt before, like, but it's not that, like it's new. You know what I mean? And I know the industry is like kind of like scratched the surface on this whole like flipping the 2000 samples and stuff like that because it's now to a point where it's nostalgic and it's classic where we could flip it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But which I've heard a lot of cool stuff, and then I've heard things that just feel like remixes to me, which is cool. But my whole thing is like, bro, I want to create that feeling and add originality to it, like new to it. You know what I mean? I'm not sampling to remix. I'm sampling to give you something new, but give you reminiscent, nostalgic feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like my process in making my stuff per se.
Yeah, how are you sampling shit now? Like how are people sampling shit now? Are you cutting it up just like on the computer, or are you like what's your process on like sampling shit?
Yeah, so I basically cut on the computer. FL Studio has great like sampler programs where I could just grab like a high res MP3 or wave whatever, bring it into FL and chop it how I like, honestly. Which is a bro, such a blessing. Like we're the era we're in because I couldn't imagine having to go to a record store, shop for vinyls, get a turntable, hook up like a RCA cable to like a console, and try and track the vinyl. Like that would be so much just to get samples.
Insane.
Like,
And then you got to match the tempo and like it's like, bro, what?
bro, it's so much. So I'm like, yo, it's amazing how I could just go on YouTube and get a sample and put it and within seconds get it into my program.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. You would think that more people would be making those more old school kind of classic sample type beats. You know what I'm saying? Like based off of how easy it is now. I feel like people used to literally, just like you said, have to go to a record store, you know, have $1,000, $2,000 worth of equipment, you know, load in the record and, you know, whatever song into the MPC or whatever sampler you're using, go in and chop it up and, you know, get the exact moment that you need and then get the other moment and put that on the pad. And it's like, I mean, that is like a full-time job just to do that, bro.
Bro, it's insane. We're so blessed to be in the era that we're in. I think people aren't sampling as much just because they're afraid of clearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is another tricky thing about this era because hip hop makes so much money. So, like back then, when you know you could sample, like clearing things were so easy because there wasn't a lot of money to be made for the people that's getting sampled. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now that hip hop is so mainstream and accessible, I think now the people that are getting sampled are making things difficult. But I take like the Kanye motto as far as like when I sample, because like with him, he was just fearless, right? And sampling is like the essence of hip hop, right? You know what I mean? Like
without a doubt, yeah.
It was built off sampling. So like me personally, I'm not getting away from that just because like, you know, it might be difficulty clearing. Like there's ways around a lot of that stuff. And I don't think it should compromise a creative and their creativity. So that's why me personally, I'm not afraid. I'll sample whatever I want. I don't care. Like, and if we gotta like find a way around it, we'll find a way around it. We'll worry about that later. But like, let's sample and let's create like some of the best music we can make and not feel compromised. That's my whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. You got to be fearless in that sense because, yeah, and you know, and on the sample stuff too, like they really got to update those rules and regulations about that because it's hindering the whole creative process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there should just be like an automatic rule, and it shouldn't be so and so from like, this old musician's estate has the final say on whether or not, you can use this sample. It should just be you get a little check, like you get a little cut of whatever is happening, and just be happy to take the check and let the creative process roll, because whoever actually created that music was a musician, was an artist. I feel like 9 times out of 10 they would appreciate the fact that shit is happening. But a lot of times, especially with older music, I feel like it's people that are 3 steps removed from the actual artist that wrote the song, and that dude might be dead or something like that. It's a wild situation that a lot of people probably aren't very hip to, but it's a real complex thing, I feel like.
Yeah, it's like you said, you would think they'd like appreciate, and like it's really flattering, like sampling somebody, you know what I mean? Because
absolutely.
If I'm sampling you, it means like I'm in love with whatever you created, and I just want to make it my own somehow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's I mean, I think we'll power through it, but like I said, me, man, I'm not like, that's kind of an advantage right now. Like, me sampling things is making my music unique in itself. And even interpolations, like I don't just sample things for the sound bed. I will interpolate lyrics from old songs that will bridge, familiarity from, like a lot of the older people that hear my stuff, and then the new people that don't know it, but when they get schooled, it's like, oh, okay, like he interpolated this old Mace record or whatever it may be, so like that's been done like before. That's what people used to always do.
That's
like,
a key element of hip hop, I feel like, is paying homage to like an older classic line and bringing it back to life. And
bro, it happens so many times, like over time. So I'm like, yo, like I'm not getting away from the essence of that. Like I refuse to do that. So yeah.
Well, it's like these hidden things to discover in these songs, I feel like. When I was listening to music growing up, and you would hear some line that's used in a song, and then maybe in some other situation you hear the original version of that song, and you hear that line, you're like, oh shit, that's from that, and that's so dope, being able to kind of connect those dots and kind of find these different it's like a trip through all these different time periods of music. When you do that, when you pay homage to something from the past, then it takes that new younger listener and gives them a reason to go discover Big L or some like dude that they may have never heard of if that didn't happen.
Exactly. And that to me is like keeping like the heritage of the music alive, because you know what I mean? So like, if you got to travel back in time or like really come across something that was taken from something older, like it keeps that the old stuff alive, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's, to me, that's huge, bro. Huge.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, dude. Yeah. So what's the most exciting thing you got going on right now? You got the solo shit going on. You got some new music out. Like, what are you most excited about in this moment that you're working on?
Man, besides my solo stuff, I'm probably most excited for Bia, man. She's came such a long way and had like a crazy like career as far as like twists and turns to get to where she's at now. So just being like close to her, and me and Aziz like executive producing a lot of her stuff. And now she's going viral again with the Whole Lot of Money record, just having a moment for herself. I think I'm more excited for her than I am for myself, honestly, because from the beginning I knew she was a superstar, and I'm sure other people, especially her peers, believed in it, but it took a while for the listeners to really get it. So now that she's getting like her just due and people are really starting to recognize it, I think that is just huge, such a blessing. So closely I'm working with her on her deluxe stuff and her album. I've gotten to work with Anderson .Paak. We've done a couple records, which is amazing. Probably one of the most talented people I've ever been around by far. Tommy Genesis, another one of my good friends, which was really cool working with her because she's so left in her own space in an alternative route, which I never worked with before. So that was interesting to do. My homie Jazz Cartier, coming from Toronto, he's a rock star in himself. Like he was most known for, his performance aspect of his career, but just he's just an alien creatively, man. And like that's really how I feel about like everybody I'm working with right now. They're so in their own space. You know what I mean? Like they do things on their accord, like not even just in the musicality of it, but in style, in fashion and branding and the way they move, the way they release music. You know what I mean? So it's not like for me, I've never been the person that's trying to get on the bandwagon of what's hot per se. I'm always about working with super dope, creative, original people that I know will reach that point, you know? And even if they don't reach that point, like we did it our way and we gave you like quality things to hold on to, you know? So like between like them, like bro, and then my own stuff, like I'm really excited to see those things unfold.
That's dope, man. Yeah, I mean, whether it's making an impact on 10 people or 10 million people, it's still making that impact. And there's something there as a creative, that give and take of, the person consuming the music and the person creating it. It's a rewarding loop for both parties, whether that's just, a few people or it's 10 million and shit's going, viral. And what's it like to see that happening for, an artist that you're working with that, to your point, what you were saying, really put that time in, and is now seeing that moment happen for her. Like, how is that to see? Is it just fucking awesome?
Bro, it's just like everything, like everyone's worked up to doing, like just like it's just imagine like working on something like majority of your life and thinking like, okay, this is gonna be my moment, and it ends up being something worth talking about, but it's not your moment. So you got to keep going and going. You have moments like this over and over until you get to the point now where like if everything goes right, you're out of here. Like you're like one of the biggest artists on the planet. Like, which I think it will go that way. It's just I don't know, man. It's hard to put into words because like bro, I hold this thing so near and dear to me, as I know she does and all of us do as a team. So it's just really like it's just a testament, man, to like really like you could make anything happen. I know that sounds a little cliche, but like bro, where we come from, like B is from the same area. Like where we come from, like there was no blueprint, there was no resources. You know what I mean? We really had to just figure it out. So like just putting that into account and reaping the benefits finally and just now getting like the recognition and being able to touch people like the way we always, intended to do, and grow our audience and take care of our families, you know what I mean? Financially, just really just carve like a whole new life for us and the people that are going to come after us and the people around us that we could put on. It's a lot to it, it's something we've been working for, and I'm just super appreciative to just witness it and be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, and on my side too, it's incredible to be able to see that hard work being rewarded too, man. And I feel like it's a motivational thing to hear, you know what I'm saying, too, for the young kids out there that are trying to think of how to get to that spot, and maybe from a place where there is no blueprint or feeling like they don't have that path. And sometimes it's just about, I feel like the themes of the things you've been saying is like kind of, trial and error, staying in motion, just continuing to move forward. Am I kind of summing that up correctly?
Yeah. Exactly.
Just, I mean, hard work, just, just putting your head down and just doing, what you can in that moment, and then trying to take advantage of the next thing to, kind of keep going step by step.
Yeah, even more so, even working smart. Like one thing I like about working smart is like just for an example, like I've seen people do, not to discredit hard work, because like that's what I'm a product of, but I've seen people make more leeway doing less just because they work smarter. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I guess that came from trial and error more so than anything. But kind of like, just like reflecting on some like the earlier questions. It's just like coming to LA and moving around, you know, the industry, from like taking notes out of like some of the, I know Bia's definitely taking notes out of like, some people that have like paved the way for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like even me, So I think it was just trying to like word it right, but it was working smart is so important, because what I've done in LA in 3 years is way more than what I've done in Lowell, Massachusetts in 7. You know what I mean? So, and that's like a product of like, really learning the game and knowing how to move and what works and what doesn't work. But I think what the hard work creates is humility. The hard work creates, a sense of like being uncompromised and really just like appreciation, like a lot of the values that are going to help longevity. That's what hard work creates for me. And working smart is helps you push forward and create more opportunity. So I think working smart is just as important as working hard, honestly.
I love that, dude. I mean, the balance of I think when people talk about that type of thing, the work hard, work smart, like it's one side or the other. You know what I'm saying? Either people are saying like you got to work hard, or other people are saying you got to work smart. But it's really more about the balance at the end of the day, because working hard gives you the discipline that you need to succeed in your life.
Right.
But only working hard, you can work as hard as you fucking want, and you're just like digging a hole or whatever you're doing, you know what I'm saying? But you're working so hard, and you're just fucking digging and digging and digging and digging. But, and you're building that discipline doing that. But there comes a time where you need to kind of like realize that you can just set up this situation to get a machine to do that, or like whatever type of, it's a horrible analogy, but just the balance of building up that, that discipline. And even just as a smart decision, to work in smart decision, to geographically put yourself in a place where you can then build different relationships and do different things. Right. That's working smart.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I feel that, man. It's cool to see, man. And it's been dope to go deep with you on all this stuff, man, and just kind of hear where you're at right now. I feel like, you're in a good headspace, and it's just dope to see all these things going on. And I know that there's just going to be more and more success with you and the team around you and the people that you're working with. And, I'm blessed to call you a friend and see all this stuff happening as well. And, it's just awesome, man. Very cool.
Oh my God, likewise to you, man. Like just everything. We haven't really got to talk too much, but like I've been seeing everything, and I'm just like super, super happy for you, man. Just cause like one thing that I've always revered in people is like the people that know how to pivot is huge. You know what I mean? Because what I've learned is I've seen people crash and burn trying to like fit us, like just keep trying. This is not in your regard, but like I've seen people crash and burn trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And, and it's like, bro, like you could literally pivot and do different things that's going to supplement what you're already trying to do. Or you might excel in the pivot and do something you've never imagined. You know what I mean? And I guess like with you and like even like the podcasting thing now kind of reminds me of me when I had to learn how to engineer and produce. You know what 100%. I mean?
Yep.
Because like for me, like at the time I didn't think it was going to help one or the other, but like, look, you know what I mean? Like it creates so much, and like I never realized I could be so good at these other things as well. You know what I mean? And it like people don't understand the pressure that we're under as creatives as well.
Yeah.
Especially when you start to like get some success and you feel like you got to sustain it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude.
So I'm just like, just basically piggybacking off like what you were saying. I'm just super happy for you as well,
No, I
man.
appreciate that, man. I mean, that's love for sure. And it's so funny that you say that, because I totally agree. And I think, you know, the comparison of the engineer thing and everything like that is so true, because even doing this podcast every week, you know, it was this new thing that I was really excited to do, but it also is putting way more attention on my music and everything else that I've been doing, as you know, for 10 years too. And so that's the thing about the, you know, the pivot is that pivoting is not stepping into some other lane. It's knowing when to pivot and build upon that pivot. You know what I'm saying? And it benefits everything you have going on. Right. And you know, it's been cool to see that there's been a re-energized feeling for me personally in the studio, because I'm balancing my work in terms of I've got these conversations which are super inspiring creatively, to talk to people, you know, to be able to talk to you about your creative process and everything you're doing. Like, obviously there's so much value there just for me as a creative, just to even hear that or be engaged in a conversation like that. And then that correlates to me wanting to make music more or do whatever. But, you know, just the nature of having content coming out every week on social media with these podcasts and things like that. Then when the song comes out, it's another thing, you know, and it's just been a cool process, man. I've been having a lot of fun with it. And so, you know, really insightful, I feel like, for you to kind of point that out. And it's very much the case, and it's been a lot of fun. And so I'm excited to kind of see where I can take it, but just here for the ride, man. And so we'll have to definitely get up in person. We'll do another one of these in person for sure. I'll bring you over to the studio once I get it set up, but we'll tap in, and we might have to go run some basketball. Honestly, that's what we really need to do.
Bro, we used to hoop so much. Me, O and Aziz were, and also like going back, like just to go back a couple questions. Aziz and Bouvet, I want to give like special shouts to, because like those, they're like my brothers for real. Like they're my brothers for real.
Shout out to them, 100%.
Just creatively, I think what's the like really like the unsaid heroes are like the people like that are coming up that you don't know a lot of these bigger artists and creatives are getting sauce from, or getting like you know what I mean? And them two, I feel like in particular, are what a lot of these like bigger musicians are either getting like inspo from like crazy, you know what I mean? Like real trendsetter shit that is going unnoticed because they're not these people yet. But like when they come up, you're gonna realize like, oh, so these were the people behind the curtain that were helping these artists develop their sound, that are really just ill in their own regards as artists themselves, as producers, engineers, so on and so forth. So I wanted to give a special shout out to Aziz and Bouvet. But what we were saying, going back to the basketball thing, like, bro, we used to have like a group chat, like 25 people in it. We used to play basketball, like,
I know,
like
man,
2-3 times a week. And that was so fire, because the camaraderie behind that was crazy. And, you know, just being able to just really like have a bunch of people in the group chat. Majority of us are from Boston-based areas, and we're out in LA, just really like bonding outside of the creative space was huge. And I think we should get back to that.
Yeah. Honestly. And it was this common denominator of, you know, the sport, you know what I'm saying? Like it brings people together, man. It gives you a community, you know, beyond just the music. But yeah, no, shout out to Bouvet, shout out to Aziz, because it's the cycle of like the creative process. I feel like, in terms of, you know, you have like these bigger names in any of these creative worlds, but to stay fresh with ideas, like you're surrounding yourself with other creatives. And so it's, you know, you get a lot of influence from these people who are trend-setting people who may not be in that position yet, and they're on their way to it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look at like The Weeknd and Drake, you know what I'm saying? Like at the highest level, right? That shit happens all the time, man. And I think the average listener might not know that that's definitely a real thing, man. There are a lot of amazing, talented, creative people out there that were in the studio with that big artist that, you know, made such a huge impact on the whole vibe of that creative process. And those are some of the most, you know, MVP people of any of these type of dynamics. Yep. So I couldn't agree with you more, man. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show, dude. This was a great talk, man. And I'm excited to do it in person. Excited to see you. You know, we'll link up 100%. And this has just been awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Bro, always, man. Always. I appreciate you just for like, just the platform and even like just the talk, you know what I mean? Because like just us being homies, like, you know, we just going and not stopping in our everyday lives. So just being able to like really sit down and just have a conversation and just like, you know, stop time and everything else that we're doing to do this. Like, I just appreciate that in itself. So like, bro, gratitude is more than you know. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, man. It's really been the best part about doing these is getting that uninterrupted hour. You know what I'm saying? We don't do that enough in our life anymore. We're always go, and if we're not going, we're looking at our phone every 2 seconds. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I haven't looked at my phone in an hour. And how good does that feel?
Amazing, you know? Bro. Amazing. And it's like, this is like a document in time. Like, we're going to look back on this and just like, because I do that a lot. I watch a lot of old interviews, man.
Yeah.
I do it all the time. So I know we're going to look back on this when we're further along in what we're doing and just be like, bro, like that was like a timestamp. You know what I mean?
100%. Yep. Now it's all about just, you know, putting it out there, man, because these are just moments in time. We're just kind of, you know, putting these things out and building up these moments in time that we can look back on. That's the beauty of music, anything creative, I feel like. You know, like Big Joints was a fucking moment in time, bro. Like that music video was a moment in time.
For sure.
So, no, all love, man. All love. Thanks for coming on. And, yeah, my man, I'll see you soon.
My guy, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, bro.
All right, this is the Cam Meekins Show. We out of here. Oh, you know what? My bad. One time, real quick. Lil Rich, follow him on social media. What's your socials? I forgot. Oh yeah, just at Lil Rich on everything. Instagram, Twitter, you know, everything. Honestly, everything. I got at Lil Rich on everything. So there it is. He got me too deep in deep thought. I forgot to do the normal outro. But follow Lil Rich on social media. Check out the new music. Check out everything he's got going on. This is the Cam Meekins Show. We out of here. Peace.